A very pleasant morning, everyone. My name is Arvind, along with my business partner Dinesh. We are super thrilled to present AspireUp's maiden joint interview series entitled AspireUp's Insight Series. Today's topic would be a rather interesting one. It's on building tomorrow's leaders today, which happens to be AspireUp's signature first level managers development program. In this part one of three, we will be interviewing each other, sharing our experiences and knowledge in terms of how teams and organizations who are keen to think differently and nurture and shape emerging leaders of tomorrow. So, Dinesh, shall we get cracking?
Let's do that.
Fantastic. Let me start by asking you the first question, Dinesh. Can you share a bit about your background and the journey of your current leadership role?
Thanks for that question, Arvind. I have to say my career started about 25 years ago in sales. And, as they say, it's always good to have a great mentor. And I was blessed to have a mentor by the name of Andrew. And Andrew was someone that guided me through learning and development in the area of sales very, very effective. So I was really blessed in that. And over that 20-year period, I rose through the ranks from grassroots selling to leading teams and also then overseeing global teams and senior managers in the company that I was working for. And so my last role, Arvind, was head of operations for a marketing organization working in the hospitality industry. But then my focus in terms of training and development had been over that 20 odd years as well, where I focused a lot on probably about 30% of my experience and training was around developing people in the organization. So that has been my journey. I wanted to also ask you, Arvind, for yourself, since we are asking each other questions, what are some of the inspiring things that you had to do for your career in leadership?
Wow, thanks a lot for that question. That sounds like a very interesting question to start out with, Dinesh. In fact, I'm glad that you found Andrew as your mentor and how he has helped you to shape your leadership journey, so that was fantastic. For me, that was many years ago when I actually stumbled upon this very interesting book by Robin Sharma, who happens to be a very prolific writer, author, and a motivator as well. Now, he wrote this book called A Leader Without a Title. So when I read that book many years ago, I was still an individual contributor. So clearly as an individual contributor, as we all know, we focus the effort on ourselves, in terms of improving our career. Little did I know that you don't need to have a title or a position to become a leader. That's what that book taught me and inspired me to say, hey, this is interesting. Looks like I can do more than just focusing on myself and my career. I can do a lot more for my teams as a leader, and I can do a lot more for my department and eventually the organizations that I'm going to be serving. So that particular book literally inspired me to take on the role of a leadership. So I went on to, like yourself, Dinesh, I went on to progress myself as a sales manager, from a sales manager to a sales leader in the training and consulting business. And from there onwards, I was fully focused and immersed in adding value to my team, and hopefully they would have benefited from my leadership style. There you go.
Arvind, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's interesting that, for you, it was your catalyst for leadership had been reading a book which got you thinking and coming out and stepping out to challenge yourself on your leadership journey. So well done on that. I wanted to ask you, how would you describe your leadership style and how do you think it has grown over the years?
Wow, another fantastic question, Dinesh. A leadership style. Talking about leadership style, it actually brings me back to the work of Kurt Levin. I'm not too sure whether you're familiar. He came out with this leadership styles where he says there is three types of leadership styles: laissez-faire, there is autocratic, and there is democratic. So if I were to use that as a basis of my response, I would actually say my leadership style has evolved from a junior individual contributor who's so gung-ho, who's very autocratic and very get to go, to eventually moving on to becoming more of a democratic type of leadership style, where I tend to now focus a lot more on servant leadership. So servant leadership, I think it was Robert Greenleaf is the one who first propounded this concept. It talks about how you focus on your team and ensuring that you serve them, and by empowering and by adding value to them, and in return they will then do the right thing by yourself and also by your organization. So for me, my leadership style right now is a lot more focused on democratic, where I encourage a lot more participation, a lot more insights from my stakeholders, from my teammates, and therefore doing my very best to serve them and create an environment that encourages them to be able to do their best and excel. So yeah, there you go.
Wow.
That's my leadership style.
Thank you, Arvind. That was really good. You can see how your transformation as a leader, in terms of how you started being a bit more autocratic, very gung ho, to the point of you thinking to yourself, I need to mature into my leadership role to be more effective in terms of helping others and influencing them for greater success. So well done on that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dinesh. And it's my turn to ask you now. I've got a tough question here for you, right? Are there any specific leaders or leadership philosophies that have influenced your approach as a leader?
Wow. Thank you very much for that difficult question, Arvid. Well, now you got to get me thinking a little bit. So I'm going to take a moment to reflect. I think for me, much like you, when I first started off, I was highly energetic. I can remember Andrew saying to me once, Dinesh, you're always bouncing off walls like a ball, right? And that was because of that energy and that enthusiasm to want to make a difference with whatever I did. And of course, want to try and make a good impression to my boss, my leader. And so when I started getting into the role of leadership, was actually Andrew saying to me, Dinesh, you can do a lot more than what you're doing right now. And what I want you to do is help me with a little bit of training, because you understand the methodologies of selling really, really well. And I want you to train some of these new recruits and help them understand the basics of selling. And that's how it all started for me, right? And so you kind of adopt your leader's style of leadership when you get going. You know, you immerse yourself by looking at that leader and going, I really like that style. And so I'm going to try and emulate that style in the way that I do things. However, because I was so energetic and driven, there was a level of impatience that came out as a young leader. And as such, I became very, very directive. No, you got to do it this way. I want you to focus on doing it this way. And then over the years, as I started to progress in my leadership journey and take on more senior roles, where I had a diverse group of multi-generational teams, then you realize directive leadership doesn't work, because you got people that are more experienced than you, much more older than you. And so that you had to try and adapt. So obviously, through trial and error, I had to adapt my style. So one of the philosophies for me that really resonated was Ken Blanchard's leadership styles. And I think that looking at the leadership styles and looking at the development levels of different people and looking at situational leadership as the model, I can safely say that was something that I adopted as I progressed in my middle management level, my career, once I read Ken Blanchard's situational leadership. And that impacted how I led teams as I progressed.
Wow, fantastic, Dinesh. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, I do have to agree with you that Ken Blanchard's situational leadership tool has been a foundation for a lot of first level and mid-level managers and leaders. In fact, we ourselves use that in our leveraging team leadership program that is part and parcel of building tomorrow's leaders today. And I think it's fundamentally a fantastic module that gets people to reflect on their leadership styles based on the readiness level of the followers, which is very good. So on that note, I would like to just sort of dig a little deeper. So now with this experience of yours that you've been sharing with us, what are some of the biggest leadership challenges that you've faced? And how did you actually overcome them, Dinesh?
Wow. Again, Arvind, you keep throwing me all of these challenging questions. So I think for me it always has been that I was lucky enough to get promoted to a leadership role from the get-go, from a individual contributor, and then taking on leadership roles as team leader and so on at a very young age. And so in my early 20s, when I had my first opportunity, I'll have to say that was probably the most trying time over that period of when I was in my mid 20s right up to early 30s, because I was still navigating how to be able to lead the multi-generational workforce. And I have to tell you, that was the biggest challenge for me. And my challenge was always, because of my age, I was quite young as a leader, trying to lead people that have got years of experience in the field and been working for that organization for a long period of time, and also quite senior in terms of their age. So with that experience, it made it very challenging for me to manage and lead people to get aligned with what I was trying to do for the team as a leader. So I think that was one of my biggest challenges, leading people that are more experienced than me. And so how did I overcome them? That's a very interesting question, because it took me to reflect on how I was. And I think one of my mentors later on the track said to me, Dinesh, please drop your pride. And why the pride? The pride came from thinking you knew everything there is to know about a particular topic. So being a subject matter expert, so to speak, and being given the position of power, you kind of develop this sense of know-it-all feeling. At least that was for me. And I came into that having that, I gave off that a bit too proud of myself, right? Thinking that I knew everything. And obviously that reflection made me think about, okay, I've got to drop my pride and I've got to be more humble in the way that I engage with the more experienced and senior people in the organization. And so the best way I realized to do that is to garner feedback in terms of ideas, or requesting for ideas and thoughts on certain topics that we were discussing as teams from the senior people within that team, and getting their feedback, and not just getting their feedback for the sake of getting the feedback and really trying to work those ideas and create actionable plans to put in place. And let me tell you, when I started doing that, there was a shift in the way people, my teams, my senior people in the organization looked at me, and mutual respect was formed. So I guess that was, you could say, the way I overcome that challenge of it.
Absolutely. Very, very inspiring, Dinesh. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really liked how you mentioned that, typically as young leaders, when we first get ourselves into the job, we tend to carry a lot of what we know as individual contributors, which is the passion and about getting things done and so on and so forth. Little did we realize that sometimes our ego, in your case, like what you say, our pride can get into our way in terms of, hey, hang in a minute. I'm now no longer an individual contributor. I'm now a manager of an individual contributor, which means there is so much more I can do to help listen out and reach out to my people. And that's exactly what you did. So this is, again, part of the democratic leadership style that I thought you executed flawlessly there to overcome that challenge. Thank you so much for that.
Arvind, thank you for that. And I need to stop you there. And now it's my turn to ask you a question.
Sure, man.
Are you ready? So here it goes. What are some of the specific instances or instance that you had to navigate a difficult leadership situation?
Sure. I just like yourself, Dinesh, being a sales leader, sales manager, and eventually becoming a sales leader, you typically have people below you that you need to sort of nurture and shape and coach. So there was one instance where we just hired a new person in my team as a sales consultant. So being in the training and consultancy industry, they say that the factory is in the brain. So you, in terms of product knowledge, you just have to learn a lot, and as you move along in your career as a salesperson, you then learn how to apply them with your clients and so on and so forth. So there was this particular instance where it was a very important client meeting, and this new person was actually managing it. So typically what we do is, as part of our preparation, we do our research on the client, and of course we also take the initiative to do a bit of a dry run. We did a bit of a role play and see how did it all go. But no matter how much role play you do, sometimes with a client, and in that particular moment, things can just go wrong. So this particular salesperson, no doubt she was fairly new, but when she was there, For some strange reason, she actually froze. So she lost confidence, but I was still there. So typically what we do there is I was trying my best not to hijack the meeting. And that's typically what leaders do because we don't want to lose the opportunity. We don't want a person to sound. So I was trying to guide that person by asking her, how would you be able to respond to that? And when that person realized that the answers were not really hitting the mark. So that's when I come in by saying that here is another point to add value to that particular, the what do you call this, response to the question that was asked by the thing. So all in all, we managed to salvage the situation. It was done in a very seamless way, all thanks to the fact that we actually did the preparation and practice before we went in. Because if we did not do that, if we did not come to an alignment, when someone gets stuck, how do we actually do that? So for me, that was one instance of how I navigated through a difficult leadership situation, because sometimes it's easy for leaders to step in too quickly to help someone and literally hijacking it from that person, and that person might literally lose the self-confidence or even the self-esteem. So it's all about the art of creating a balance and doing it well so that they don't lose the self-confidence and self-esteem. And of course, in our typical fashion, after the meeting, we did a bit of a Kaizen where we spoke about what are some of the things that went well, what are some of the things can be improved. And that was a very good episode or very good live role play, if you like, for that person to actually use that as a step up and actually do much better in the future. So there you
Wow.
go, Dinesh.
Wonderful. I think what I really liked about this situation that you handled so swiftly and effectively was the fact that you did not lose your cool at that juncture in that meeting. You didn't expose or undermine your colleague or junior colleague that was there, and you were helping that person learn the art of meetings and presentations and effective negotiation. And that, my dear friend, I think it's a wonderful way to help nurture and grow people. So I think a leader's real test comes from situations like this, where they are put in a spot. And do they lose their cool and try to control everything? Or do they allow it to flow with a little positive nudge so that your junior staff can get back composure and continue on with you supporting and guiding the process as you go on? So well done on that.
Thank you so much, Dinesh. It looks like we have come to the end of our segment, which is part 1 of 3.
Yes, we have.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us and for listening to some of those wonderful insights and sharing that we have just shared. It's strictly from our experience. Hope it's been useful. We are hoping to meet you again on part 2 of 3, where we explore more salient questions that's going to help attempt to bring some light on this topic, which is building tomorrow's leaders today. So on that note, till we meet you again. Bye from
Thank
Arvind.
you. Bye from Dinesh. Take care.
Take care now. Cheers.